Hello and welcome to Hauntic, your podcast where dark history blurs with legend. I'm your host Nick, and tonight we're going to travel to Georgia, USA, to Lake Lanier, a place of sunshine, barbecues and speedboats, a place where 11 million people flock each year for their summer escape. But beneath its sparkling surface lies something darker: death, disappearance, and a legend that just refuses to die. Lake Lanier was featured in Netflix's documentary series Files of the Unexplained, and tonight's story was written for Hauntic.com by our contributor Lauren Campbell. This is the story of Lake Lanier. Lake Lanier didn't exist until 1956, when US Army Corps of Engineers completed the Buford Dam and flooded thousands of acres of farmland, homes and communities. Entire roads, bridges and even cemeteries were swallowed beneath the rising waters. On paper, it was progress, a water supply for Atlanta, flood control and hydropower, but for the families who lived there, it was nothing but destruction. Over 250 families were forced out, some say graves were left behind, and for the town of Oscarville, a historically black community, a way of life was erased. We chose Lake Lanier today because at the surface it looks like paradise, but it carries a brutal reputation as one of the most deadly lakes in the United States. Since its creation, over 700 people have died here. Since the 1990s, more than 200 deaths have been reported: boating collisions, electrocutions and drownings that defy explanation. Locals warn visitors not to swim. The waters are cold, murky and filled with debris and jagged structures, but still every year the body count rises. Beneath Lake Lanier lies the ghost of a town. Oscarville was once a thriving community. The families that lived there farmed, worshipped and lived on that land, but they would one day be condemned to the water. When the dam was built, many of the buildings weren't destroyed, they were simply swallowed. Divers have often reported seeing submerged structures, and some have even claimed to have touched door frames, pews, and even gravestones in the dark silt that lines the floor. Local legends now say that the displaced dead of Oscarville are restless, exacting revenge by claiming the lives of swimmers above, dragging them down into the murky depths. The stories soon began to pile up. On Christmas Day 1964, a car carrying 11 people careered off the bridge, and 7 were killed instantly. In 2023, 3 unrelated deaths struck in a single weekend: an electrocution, a drowning and a disappearance. And then there's the tales you won't find in the police reports: jet skiers being pulled down by invisible hands, sunbathers hearing disembodied voices on the banks, and divers who claimed feeling arms and legs brush against them in the dark, only to find no one there. So what really is happening at Lake Lanier? Well, we can separate it into 2 sections: fact and folklore. Let's look at the facts first. It is very dangerous. There are strong currents, sudden drop-offs, submerged debris and very low visibility, making it treacherous even for experienced swimmers and divers. And then we'll look at the folklore. For many, the facts don't explain everything. A curse lingers, ghosts wander, the lady in blue still walks the bridge, and the restless souls of Oscarville, despite being relocated prior to the flooding, are still tied to the home they loved dearly. Now, in parapsychology, there is an old adage: expectation shapes experience. And what exactly do we mean by this? Well, in simple terms, it means that the more suggestive people are more likely to encounter paranormal activity because they're expecting it to happen. Take, for example, the divers that claim that they felt arms and legs reaching out at them while they were under the water. If these divers were skeptics and maybe not familiar with Lake Lanier's history and folklore, they'd most likely associate the sensations they felt beneath the water as something relatively normal and mundane to their specific line of work or hobby, such as a fish swimming past or some debris catching them from the bottom of the lake. That's not to say they won't be startled for a quick second. I'm sure, regardless how many times they've been under, they would be. However, they wouldn't necessarily see it as something paranormal. Now take another diver who's well versed on the folklore and history of the lake and is perhaps even going down to try and find the old houses. Maybe he's even one that claims to have found old gravestones. This diver in particular will be very suggestive and susceptible to paranormal behaviour, and therefore it might give added meaning to something simple such as a twig brushing his leg, assuming it to be something paranormal such as a ghost. So you've got two very similar people doing something physically similar, however they have a very different emotional experience based on their own mindset at the time.
I'm sorry, what?
Now, I understand, of course, I'm not saying that one's right and the other's wrong, or that it's either haunted or definitely not haunted. I'm just saying that it's very important to remain balanced when weighing up all sides of the conversation. So some could suggest that if somebody believes in the Blue Lady or the restless spirits underneath the water, then every ripple in that water would feel like a hand, and every slight wind would feel like a voice, or even the Blue Lady's cry. But that doesn't take away from the fact that folklore has immense power, and it does preserve a memory. The Lady of the Lake keeps alive the story of Susie and Delia, and the tales of Oscarville remind us of a community erased. Regardless, Lake Lanier is a place of both beauty and tragedy, vacation land and graveyard. Haunted, cursed, or simply perilous, its legends endure because the human cost is real. So if you ever find yourself standing on that bridge at night, look out across the water, and if you see a woman dressed in blue, don't stop the car. I'm Nick, and this has been your Hauntic podcast, where dark history blurs with legend. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and sleep tight.